The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the general store, and Clara Peterson pressed her trembling fingers against the worn leather seat, counting her breaths the way she had learned to do when the world turned dark 3 years ago. Through the small window, she could hear the bustle of Petaluma, California, a town she would never see but had traveled 2,000 miles to call home. "Miss Peterson," the driver's gruff voice carried through the coach, "we have arrived. Your intended should be here shortly." Clara smoothed her navy traveling dress, her fingers finding each button by memory, making sure everything was in place. The letters from Nathan Foster had been read to her by the matron at the Boston boarding house, each word painting a picture in her mind of a man who seemed kind, steady, and desperately lonely after losing his wife to fever 2 years prior. She had been honest in her response, dictating carefully to the matron's pen that an illness had stolen her sight, but not her capability, not her determination, and certainly not her need for a new beginning far from the pitying whispers of Boston society. The coach door opened, and she felt the rush of warm September air against her face, so different from the crisp autumn she had left behind. Strong hands reached up to help her down, and she carefully placed her boot on the step, her fingers gripping the door frame. "Easy now," the driver said. 3 steps down. Her feet found solid ground, and she stood there with her small traveling bag, trying to orient herself in this new soundscape. Horses whinnying, the creak of wagon wheels, voices calling out greetings and negotiations, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Somewhere nearby, a woman laughed, and Clara felt a pang of longing for the friendships she had left behind. "Miss Peterson," a different voice now, younger than she had expected, uncertain. "I am Nathan Foster." She turned toward the voice, tilting her head slightly in the way she had learned helped her focus on someone speaking. "Mr. Foster, I am pleased to finally meet you." A long silence followed, and Clara felt her stomach tighten. She had warned him, had made certain he understood, but perhaps seeing the reality was different from reading words on a page. She straightened her spine, prepared for rejection, prepared to somehow find her way back to Boston and the small, suffocating room at the boarding house. "You will never need eyes to see my love." The words came out rushed, almost fierce, and Clara felt tears prick behind her useless eyes. "I apologize for my silence, Miss Peterson. I was simply taken by how beautiful you are, and then I felt like a fool because I do not know if that matters to you now, and I did not mean to be rude." A surprised laugh escaped her. "It matters, Mr. Foster, perhaps more than it should. And I thank you for the compliment, though I cannot verify its truth. You have to trust me on that account." His voice warmed with a smile she could hear. "I have a wagon just here. May I help you? The ranch is about 5 miles outside of town." She nodded, and then his hand was at her elbow, steady and warm even through the fabric of her sleeve. He guided her carefully, warning her of the step up to the wagon seat, making sure she was settled before he climbed up beside her. The wagon lurched into motion, and Clara gripped the seat, feeling the unfamiliar rhythm of this new conveyance. In Boston, she had rarely left the boarding house after losing her sight, too afraid of the chaos of city streets, too proud to always need assistance. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, wanting to fill the silence with something other than her own anxiety. Nathan cleared his throat. "I have about 200 acres, running cattle mostly, some horses. I have 3 men who work for me full-time, good men who have been with me since before Martha passed. There is a main house, nothing fancy but sturdy, with 4 bedrooms and a kitchen with a good stove. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who comes 3 times a week. She is from China, came here with her husband to work on the railroads, but he died in an accident. She is a good woman, though her English is not perfect. My English will have to be perfect enough for both of us then, Clara said. She felt him glance at her, felt the weight of his attention. What made you write for a mail-order bride, Mr. Foster? Surely there are women here who would be suitable. He was quiet for a long moment, and Clara heard the leather reins creaking in his hands. Honestly, Miss Peterson, the women here knew Martha. They knew how perfect she was, how she could run that ranch house like clockwork, how she could rope a calf and bake bread and tend the sick all in the same day. I could see it in their eyes when they looked at me, that I would be comparing them to her, and maybe I would have been. When I decided to write to the matrimonial agency, I thought perhaps someone who had not known her would not feel that shadow hanging over everything. Clara absorbed this, understanding the honesty in his words. And when you received my letter explaining about my condition, why did you not withdraw your offer? Why would I? The question seemed genuine. You were honest with me, which I respected, and I thought, perhaps we are both starting something new, something with no shadows. I lost Martha, and you lost your sight. We both know what it is to have the world change in ways we cannot control. That seemed like as good a foundation as any for a partnership. Partnership. Not a love match then, but Clara had not expected that. Love was for people who had choices, who had options. She was 24 years old, blind, and possessed of a small inheritance that would last perhaps another year if she was frugal. This was practical, and she had made her peace with that. The wagon turned, and Clara felt the quality of sound change as they left the main road. The air smelled different here, grass and earth and something else, something wild and open that Boston had never had. We are on my land now, Nathan said. The house is just over this rise. A few minutes later, the wagon stopped, and Clara heard Nathan set the brake and jump down. His boots crunched on gravel, and then he was at her side, offering his hand. She took it, letting him guide her down, and then she simply stood there, turning her face to the sun, feeling the warmth of late afternoon. "Tell me what you see," she said softly. Nathan's hand was still holding hers, and he did not let go. "The house is straight ahead, about 20 paces. It is painted white with green shutters, 2 stories, with a porch that wraps around the front. There are flower boxes in the windows, though I confess I have not tended them well since Martha passed. To the left is the barn, red paint fading a bit, and beyond that are the corrals and pastures. The mountains rise up in the distance, golden brown this time of year. There are 3 oak trees between the house and the barn, old and thick, good for shade. And the sky is blue, not a cloud in sight." Clara smiled, building the picture in her mind, adding it to the map she was constantly creating in the darkness. "It sounds lovely." "It is home," Nathan said simply. "And I hope it will be yours as well. We should discuss the sleeping arrangements. I thought, given the circumstances, you might want your own room until after the wedding. I have prepared the guest room for you. Mrs. Chen made sure it was ready." "When is the wedding?" Clara asked. "I thought perhaps in a week." "That would give you time to settle, to be sure this is what you want. Reverend Peters can come out to the ranch, or we can go into town if you prefer. The ranch would be fine." Clara felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest. A week. 7 days until she married a man she had just met, in a place she could not see, starting a life she could barely imagine. Nathan led her toward the house, describing each step. 3 steps up to the porch. There is a railing on your right. The front door is wide, opens inward. We are in the main room now, parlor to your left, dining table to your right, kitchen straight back. The house smelled of wood polish and something cooking, something with meat and vegetables. Clara heard footsteps approaching, quick and light. "Mr. Foster, you are back." A woman's voice, accented just as Nathan had described. "And this is Miss Peterson, yes. Mrs. Chen. Yes, this is Clara Peterson. Miss Peterson, this is Mrs. Chen. I am very pleased to meet you, Clara said, turning toward where she thought the woman stood. Oh, the poor dear, Mrs. Chen said, and Clara felt her heart sink. Not pity, not already. But Mrs. Chen continued, such a long journey you have, you must be exhausted. I have stew cooking and fresh bread, and I prepare your room very nice. Come, come, you must rest before dinner. The older woman took Clara's hand, her skin warm and soft, and led her through the house. Clara counted steps, tried to memorize the layout. Kitchen, then a hallway, then Mrs. Chen was opening a door. Your room, Miss Peterson. The bed is straight ahead, 5 steps. A dresser on the left, a wardrobe on the right, and a wash basin on a stand by the window. Mr. Foster brings your trunk later. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. This is very kind of you. You are to be mistress of this house, Mrs. Chen said matter-of-factly. I help you learn everything. Where things are kept, how the house is run. We will make it work. After Mrs. Chen left, Clara carefully explored the room, running her hands over the furniture, finding the bed and sitting on its edge. The mattress was good, firm but not hard. She found the window by the change in temperature, the warmth of the sun streaming through. She leaned her face toward it, letting the light play across her eyelids, seeing nothing but that reddish glow that was all she had left of light. A soft knock came at the door. Miss Peterson. I have your trunk. Come in, Mr. Foster. She heard him enter, the heavy thud of her trunk being set down. I will leave you to rest. Dinner will be in about an hour. I can come fetch you when it is ready. Mr. Foster, Clara turned toward his voice. Thank you for bringing me here. For not changing your mind, Clara. Her name, just her name, spoken like a promise. I am a man of my word, and I think perhaps we will both find something good in this arrangement. After he left, Clara unpacked her trunk by feel, finding each dress, each petticoat, her nightgowns, her hairbrush, the few treasured items she owned. A music box her mother had given her before she died, which played a tinkling waltz. A book of poetry, useless now but precious for the memory of reading it. The letters Nathan had sent, which she kept though she could not read them herself. She washed her face and hands in the basin, changed from her travel dress into something fresher, and brushed out her long blonde hair, braiding it over one shoulder. When Nathan knocked again, she was ready, and she took his offered arm. Dinner was awkward but not unpleasant. Nathan sat to her right, guiding her hand to show her where the plate was, where her glass stood. Mrs. Chen had left the meal warming on the stove and departed for her own home, leaving Nathan and Clara alone for the first time. Tell me about yourself, Nathan said. Your letters were rather brief on personal details. Clara cut her meat carefully, relieved when the knife found tender stew beef and not gristle. What would you like to know? What did you do in Boston? Before I went blind, Clara appreciated that he asked directly. I was a teacher. Very young students, primer school. I loved it. I loved watching them learn to form their letters, to sound out words. I loved reading to them. When I lost my sight, I lost that position. No one wanted a blind teacher, even for small children, perhaps especially for small children. I lived at a boarding house run by a charitable organization, doing small tasks, mending mostly, things I could do by feel. It was not a terrible life, but it was not a life I wanted to continue living until I grew old. How did it happen, if I may ask? Clara set down her fork, her appetite fading. A fever 3 years ago. It came on suddenly. I was ill for nearly 2 weeks, delirious with it. When the fever finally broke, I woke to darkness. The doctor said it was not unheard of, that high fevers can damage the eyes. There was nothing to be done. That must have been terrifying. It was. Clara picked up her fork again, forcing herself to eat. For a long time I was very angry, at God, at the world, at my own body for betraying me. But anger does not change anything, so I learned how to navigate, how to listen better, how to use my hands to see. I am not helpless, Mr. Foster. I want you to know that. I will need help with some things, but I can contribute to this household. I have no doubt of that. His voice was warm, sincere. And please call me Nathan. If we are to be married in a week, we should use our given names. Nathan, she repeated, testing the shape of his name. And you should call me Clara. They talked through dinner, safe topics at first. The ranch, the cattle market, the weather patterns of California. Then deeper things. Nathan told her about Martha, how they had met at a church social in Sacramento, how she had agreed to come to the ranch as his bride despite her family's concerns about the isolation. He spoke of her with fondness, but not the desperate grief Clara had feared. I loved her, Nathan said quietly. But I also know she is gone and I am still here. Life continues. Clara shared more about Boston, about her family, her father, a clerk who had died when she was 15, her mother who had passed just months before Clara's illness. How alone she had been, with no siblings, no close relatives who wanted the burden of a blind woman. When dinner was finished, Nathan guided her hand to find the dishes. Mrs. Chen will handle those in the morning. Let me show you the kitchen, help you learn where things are kept. For the next hour, Nathan patiently walked Clara through the kitchen, letting her open each cabinet, feel the contents. Plates here, cups there, pots hanging from hooks, the stove with its various surfaces and temperatures, the pump at the sink, the pantry with its shelves of dry goods. You are very patient, Clara said. I am a rancher. Patience is required when teaching a new horse, a new dog, a new calf, though I suppose comparing you to livestock is not very romantic. Clara laughed, surprised by his self-deprecating humor. I have been compared to worse, I assure you. The week passed more quickly than Clara had expected. Each day, she rose early, learning the rhythms of the ranch house. Mrs. Chen arrived by mid-morning, and together they worked on meals, on laundry, on all the tasks that kept a household running. The older woman had infinite patience, showing Clara again and again where things were kept, how the stove heated, how to tell if the water was boiling by sound and steam. Nathan was gone much of each day, working with his men on the ranch, but he returned for dinner, and afterward they sat on the porch while he described the sunset, the stars emerging, the way the mountains turned purple in the twilight. On the third evening he asked, "Would you like to see the barn? Meet the horses?" Clara had not left the house since arriving, fearful of the unfamiliar terrain. But she nodded, and Nathan guided her down the porch steps, across the yard he had paced out for her, describing distances and landmarks. The barn smelled of hay and horses and leather, warm and animal. "This is Thunder," Nathan said, leading her hand to a soft muzzle. "He is my primary riding horse, very gentle despite his name." Clara stroked the horse's nose, feeling the warm breath against her palm. "Hello, Thunder." Nathan introduced her to the other horses, to the barn cat who wound around her ankles, to the chickens in their coop. With each introduction, Clara felt the world expanding slightly, her map growing more detailed. On the fifth day, Nathan asked if she could ride. Clara admitted she had never been particularly skilled even with sight, but she was willing to try. He brought out an older mare named Bess, patient and steady, and with Nathan walking beside them, Clara sat in the saddle and felt the power of the animal beneath her, the way it responded to her uncertain commands. "You are doing well," Nathan encouraged. "Bess knows what she is doing, even if you are still learning." The wedding day arrived with cloudless skies and warm sun. Mrs. Chen helped Clara dress in the one good dress she owned, a soft green cotton that the matron in Boston had assured her brought out her eyes. Mrs. Chen braided flowers into Clara's hair, describing each one as she worked. White roses from the bush by the kitchen door, purple asters from the meadow, and golden poppy, our California flower. Reverend Peters arrived in the early afternoon, along with the 3 ranch hands who would serve as witnesses. Nathan had asked Clara if she wanted to invite anyone from town, but she knew no one, so they kept the ceremony small and simple. They stood in the parlor, Clara in her green dress and Nathan in what Mrs. Chen had told her was his finest suit. Clara could not see Nathan's face as they exchanged vows, could not watch him slip a ring onto her finger, but she felt the weight of the gold band, heard the steadiness in his voice as he promised to love and cherish her. When Reverend Peters said Nathan could kiss his bride, there was a moment of hesitation. Then Nathan's hands were gentle on Clara's face, tilting it up, and his lips brushed hers with a softness that made her breath catch. It was brief, chaste, but it carried the promise of more. Mrs. Chen had prepared a wedding feast, and they ate and laughed, and the ranch hands played fiddle and harmonica, and Nathan danced with Clara on the porch, guiding her steps, describing the movements before he made them so she would not stumble. "One step back, now turn to your right and I will catch you." Clara was breathless and happy, feeling young and reckless in a way she had not felt since before the fever. When the sun set and the guests departed, Nathan walked Clara to her room, the guest room she had occupied all week. "I want you to know," he said quietly, standing in the doorway, "that I have expectations of a marriage of a wife. But I also know we barely know each other. I will not rush you, Clara. When you are ready, my room is at the end of the hall." He kissed her forehead and left, and Clara stood alone in her room, now feeling different about the bed, the space, the separation. She was married now. This was her home, Nathan was her husband, and yet they remained strangers in so many ways. 3 more days passed. Clara grew bolder in her explorations of the house, memorizing the number of steps between rooms, the sounds of different floorboards, the way the afternoon sun warmed the parlor. She baked bread with Mrs. Chen, and though the first loaf was lopsided, the second was better. She churned butter, snapped beans, hemmed a shirt Nathan had torn on fence wire. At night, she lay alone in the guest room and thought about the kiss on their wedding day, about Nathan's hands on her face, about the uncertainty of what came next. On the 4th night after the wedding, Clara made her decision. She waited until the house was quiet, until she heard Nathan moving around in his room at the end of the hall. Then she carefully walked the 12 steps from her door to his, counting each one, trailing her fingers along the wall. She knocked softly, the door opened. "Clara, is something wrong?" "No," her voice was barely a whisper. "I just thought we are married now, and I am tired of sleeping alone." Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then, "Are you certain I am?" He took her hand and led her into his room, closing the door behind them. Clara's heart was racing, her mouth dry. She had only the vaguest idea of what happened between a husband and wife, gleaned from whispered conversations among the women at the boarding house, from oblique references in books she had read before losing her sight. "We will go slowly," Nathan said. "And you will tell me if something frightens you or if you want to stop." He helped her out of her nightgown, his hands gentle but assured, and then she felt the quilts of his bed beneath her, the weight of him beside her. In the darkness that was always her world, she relied on touch and sound and the overwhelming newness of skin against skin, of breath mingling with breath. Nathan kept his promise, moving slowly, asking permission with every new intimacy until Clara stopped thinking and simply felt. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, feeling his fingers trace idle patterns on her shoulder. "I am glad you came to my door," Nathan said into the darkness. "So am I." The next morning, Clara woke in Nathan's bed, disoriented at first until memory returned. She heard him moving around the room, getting dressed. "Stay as long as you like," he said. "I need to ride out to the north pasture today to check the herd, but I should be back by dinner." Clara felt for the edge of the bed, found her nightgown on the floor. "I should help Mrs. Chen. She will be here soon." Nathan's hand touched her shoulder, then his lips pressed against her temple. "Tonight, will you sleep here again?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt. The days settled into a rhythm. Clara rose with Nathan, dressed, and prepared breakfast while he handled the morning chores. Mrs. Chen arrived and together they managed the house. Nathan returned for dinner and they ate and talked, and Clara learned the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his smiles that she could not see but could feel in the way his voice changed. At night, they shared his bed, and Clara discovered that marriage was more than she had expected. Not just the physical intimacy, though that was revelation enough, but the small moments. The way Nathan read to her from the newspaper, his voice stumbling over words he did not know how to pronounce. The way he described everything so she could build her world. The way he trusted her with tasks around the ranch, teaching her to gather eggs from the hens despite her nervousness, to identify each of the horses by their different sounds and smells. 6 weeks after the wedding, Clara woke one morning feeling nauseated. She barely made it to the wash basin before her stomach rebelled. Nathan was immediately concerned, but Mrs. Chen took one look at Clara's pale face and knowing smile appeared. "I think perhaps there will be a baby, yes," the older woman said. Clara pressed a hand to her stomach, barely daring to hope. Her monthly courses had always been irregular, so she had not noticed their absence. But the nausea, the tenderness in her breasts, the odd fatigue that had been creeping over her all spoke to the possibility. Dr. Williams came out from town 2 days later, a gruff man with gentle hands who examined Clara and confirmed what they all suspected. "You are with child, Mrs. Foster. I would estimate about 2 months along. The baby should arrive in late May." After the doctor left, Nathan pulled Clara into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby, our baby." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, sudden fear gripping her. "I know you did not marry me expecting this so soon." "Clara." Nathan's hands framed her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I am more than happy. I am overjoyed. You have given me more in these few months than I dared hope for, a partner, a companion, and now a child." The pregnancy progressed. Clara felt the changes in her body, the way it shifted and grew. Mrs. Chen made sure she ate well, and Nathan fussed over her constantly until Clara laughingly told him she was not made of glass. In December, the rains came, and Clara discovered that the sound of rain on the roof was one of her new favorite things. She sat in the parlor, knitting small clothes for the baby, while Nathan mended tack and read aloud from a book of adventure stories. "You think about what they will look like?" Clara asked one evening, her hands stilling on the tiny shirt she was making. "Every day," Nathan admitted. "I hope they have your spirit, your determination." "And your kindness," Clara said. "Your patience." Christmas came, and Nathan brought a pine tree into the house, describing its shape while Clara helped string popcorn garlands. They had dinner with some of the neighboring ranchers, people who welcomed Clara warmly, who did not make her feel lacking or pitied. One of the wives, Sarah Donnelly, walked Clara around their house and spoke plainly. "I am glad Nathan found you. He was so lost after Martha died. You have brought him back to life." The baby kicked for the first time in January, a flutter that made Clara gasp. She grabbed Nathan's hand and pressed it to her stomach. "There, did you feel it? Nathan laughed with pure delight when the baby kicked again against his palm. Strong already. As Clara's belly grew, Nathan adapted. He helped her with tasks that became difficult. He steadied her when her balance shifted. He rubbed her aching back at night. Clara had never felt so cherished, so valued. In March, unseasonably warm and bright, Nathan took Clara on a picnic. They rode together on Thunder, Clara sitting in front of Nathan, safe in his arms. He spread a blanket under one of the oak trees and described the landscape. The grass is already turning golden. The wildflowers are blooming, purple and orange and yellow. The cattle are grazing in the distance. And you are beautiful, Clara. You grow more beautiful every day. Clara turned her face up to the sun, her hand resting on her swollen belly. I never imagined I could be this happy. When I lost my sight, I thought I had lost everything, but I was wrong. I just needed to find a different kind of seeing. You have taught me that too, Nathan said. I was so focused on what I had lost that I could not see what might still be gained. The baby came on a warm evening in late May, just as the doctor had predicted. Mrs. Chen stayed at the house, and Sarah Donnelly came to help, and Dr. Williams arrived in time to deliver a healthy, squalling baby boy. He has a good set of lungs, the doctor announced, placing the baby in Clara's arms. Clara held her son, running her fingers over his tiny face, memorizing every feature by touch. Small nose, perfect rosebud mouth, soft cheeks, and a surprising amount of hair. What should we name him? Nathan asked, sitting beside Clara on the bed, his arm around her shoulders. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, holding their son, Clara knew. What about James, after my father, James Foster? Nathan tested the name. It is perfect. Those first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful. Clara learned to nurse the baby, to change him, to soothe him when he cried. Nathan helped with everything, never complaining about broken sleep or the endless needs of an infant. You are a good father, Clara told him one night, listening to him walk the floor with James, humming a tuneless lullaby. I am trying to be. James grew, and summer arrived hot and dry. Clara spent hours on the porch, James in her arms or playing on a blanket at her feet, while she listened to the sounds of the ranch. She could identify the individual horses by their hoofbeats now, could tell which of the ranch hands was approaching by their walk, could judge the time of day by the angle of the sun's warmth on her skin. When James was 6 months old, Clara felt confident enough to walk to the barn on her own, carrying him on her hip. Nathan found her there, standing in Thunder's stall, letting the baby pet the horse's nose. I was worried when I could not find you in the house, Nathan said, though his voice held no censure. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it, Clara explained. That I could move around the ranch independently. I counted my steps, listened to the sounds, and I made it. Nathan kissed her, James giggling between them. You are the strongest person I know. The seasons turned. James learned to crawl, then to walk, his small hands clutching Clara's skirt as he toddled around the house. Clara learned his sounds, his different cries, the patter of his feet on the wooden floors. Nathan taught James about the ranch, taking him out in the mornings, returning with stories about what the toddler had seen. He loves the horses, Nathan reported one evening when James was nearly 2 years old. He has no fear. He walked right up to Thunder and patted his leg. Clara felt a familiar flutter in her stomach, one she remembered from before. She waited a few more weeks to be sure before telling Nathan. Another baby. His joy was immediate and uncomplicated. When? Early spring, I think. Their second son arrived during a rainstorm in March, 2 weeks before James turned 2. They named him Samuel, after Nathan's father, and he was calmer than James had been, content to sleep and nurse and watch the world with solemn dark eyes. Clara's life was full beyond measure. 2 sons, a husband who loved her, a home she knew by heart. She could navigate the house and the immediate yard without assistance. She could cook and clean and tend her children. She contributed to the ranch in ways that mattered, but there were still moments of frustration, of grief for what she had lost. She would never see her sons' faces, never watch them grow and change. She would never see Nathan, the man she had come to love so deeply. One evening, when James was 4 and Samuel was 2, Clara sat on the porch while the boys played in the yard, Nathan watching them. "Tell me what they look like," Clara said. "I want to picture them." Nathan settled beside her, taking her hand. "James has my dark hair, but it curls like yours does. His eyes are brown, and he has a stubborn set to his jaw that I suspect comes from both of us. He is all energy, always moving, always asking questions. Samuel has lighter hair, more golden, and his eyes are hazel, changing color depending on the light. He is quieter, more thoughtful, but when he smiles, it is like the sun coming out." "And you?" Clara asked. "I have never asked you to describe yourself." Nathan laughed softly. "I am nothing special to look at. Tall, I suppose. Dark hair going gray at the temples now. Brown eyes. Too much sun has left me weathered. But I am strong enough to do the work that needs doing, and that is sufficient." "It is more than sufficient," Clara said. "You are everything I need." The years continued their steady march. James started school in town, riding in with Nathan 3 days a week. Samuel was quieter than his brother, but just as curious, following Clara around the house, helping with simple tasks. Clara became known in Petaluma as the rancher's blind wife, but not with pity. People respected her, saw how capable she was. She joined the Church Ladies' Aid Society, contributing quilts and knitted goods for the charity auction. Mrs. Chen remained a constant presence, now more friend than employee. When Clara was 32 and Nathan 41, their 3rd child arrived, a daughter they named Rose, who had Clara's blonde hair and Nathan's stubborn jaw. With Rose, Clara felt even more keenly what she was missing, the sight of a daughter she would never see grow into a woman. But Rose, like her brothers before her, learned early that her mother's blindness was simply a fact of life, not a tragedy. She became Clara's eyes, describing everything in careful detail, learning to be observant and articulate because her mother depended on it. "The roses by the kitchen door are blooming, Mama," 5-year-old Rose reported one June morning. "They are pink like the dress Mrs. Chen made me." "Thank you, sweetheart," Clara said, pulling Rose into a hug. James was 10 now, Samuel 8, both boys helping with ranch work, learning from their father. Nathan had expanded the ranch over the years, buying adjacent land, increasing the herd. They were prosperous, comfortable, able to afford small luxuries. One evening, after the children were in bed, Nathan found Clara in the parlor, working on a piece of embroidery by feel, creating patterns she designed in her mind. "You remember the day we met?" Nathan asked, settling beside her. "Of course. You said I would never need eyes to see your love. You believe that now, after all these years?" Clara set aside her embroidery and turned to face him, her hands finding his face, tracing the lines she had memorized long ago. "I believe it more every day. I feel your love in 1,000 ways, in the way you describe the world for me, in your patience when I struggle, in the way you have never made me feel less than whole. I may not see you with my eyes, Nathan, but I see you with my heart, and that has always been enough." Nathan pulled her close, and Clara rested her head on his shoulder, content in the life they had built together. When Rose was 10 and James 17, already as tall as his father and working the ranch full-time, Clara received a letter from Boston. "Mrs. Chen," read it aloud, her voice faltering over some of the words. It was from a doctor, a specialist in eye conditions who had heard about Clara's case through some mutual acquaintance. He believed there might be a treatment, a surgery that could potentially restore some vision. Nathan was immediately eager. We should go, we should at least explore the possibility. But Clara was hesitant. It has been 16 years, Nathan. I have built a life in darkness. What if the surgery fails? What if it succeeds? I do not know if I want to risk the person I have become. They discussed it for weeks. The children were divided. James thought she should try. Samuel was worried about the risks. Rose simply wanted her mother to be happy. In the end, Clara decided not to pursue the surgery. The risk seemed too great, the potential disappointment too sharp. She had made peace with her blindness, had learned not just to cope but to thrive. I am happy, she told Nathan. Truly happy. My life is full and rich. I do not need sight to have that. Nathan accepted her decision without argument, and life continued. The children grew. James married a girl from town, a sweet-natured woman named Emma who was patient with her blind mother-in-law. Samuel showed talent for training horses, working with the difficult animals that others gave up on. Rose was bright and quick, learning to read and write with an ease that made Clara proud, even if she could not see her daughter's accomplishments. Clara turned 40, then 45. Nathan's hair went fully gray, and he moved a bit slower, but he was still strong, still steady. They had been married over 20 years, and their love had only deepened. On their 25th anniversary, Nathan took Clara on another picnic under the oak trees. "You remember the first time we came here?" he asked. "When I was pregnant with James. You told me I was beautiful, even though I could not see myself. You are still beautiful. More so because now I know every facet of who you are, not just what you look like." Clara smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of leaves overhead. "I have never regretted coming to California, never regretted marrying you. You gave me a second chance at life," Nathan said. "When Martha died, I thought I was finished with happiness. But you taught me that there are many kinds of love, many ways to build a life. You taught me to see with more than just my eyes." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, two people who had found each other across impossible distance and built something lasting. When Clara was 50, Nathan 60, they became grandparents. James and Emma had a daughter, and Clara held the baby with hands that now showed age, stroking the soft skin, marveling at the miracle of new life. "What does she look like?" Clara asked James. "She has blonde hair like you, Mama, and blue eyes. We named her Clara after you." Tears pricked behind Clara's sightless eyes. "I am honored." More grandchildren followed. Samuel married and had twin boys. Rose, who married a schoolteacher from Sacramento, had a son and then another daughter. Clara's life was full of voices, of small hands grabbing at her skirts, of laughter and chaos and love. Nathan retired from active ranch work, turning most of the operations over to James while he focused on gentler tasks. He and Clara spent long hours on the porch, watching the sunset he described in loving detail, listening to the sounds of their grandchildren playing in the yard. "You remember when I first arrived?" Clara asked one evening. "I was so frightened. I could not imagine how I would manage." "And look at you now," Nathan said. "You have managed more than I ever dreamed. You raised 3 children, ran a household, contributed to this community. You have lived a full life, Clara." "We have lived a full life," Clara corrected. Together. As they aged, their roles reversed slightly. Nathan's eyesight, always sharp, began to fail with cataracts. Clara became his guide in the darkness, using all the skills she had learned over decades of blindness. "I finally understand," Nathan said one day when he was 72 and struggling to see even with his glasses. "What you have dealt with all these years. And now I can be your eyes," Clara said, taking his arm, "as you have been mine." They celebrated 50 years of marriage with all their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch. Clara sat in the parlor, listening to the voices swirl around her, feeling the press of small bodies as grandchildren climbed into her lap, hearing Nathan's laughter from across the room. Mrs. Chen, now ancient and wizened, had made a cake, and someone played the fiddle and they danced, Clara and Nathan, just as they had on their wedding day, still guided by his voice, still trusting him to catch her. That night, lying in bed, Nathan said, "I've had a good life, Clara. No regrets." "Nor have I." Nathan passed peacefully in his sleep at 78, Clara beside him. She woke to find him cold, and though grief crashed over her like a wave, there was also a strange peace. They had been given more than 50 years together, years full of love and laughter and family. At the funeral, Clara stood straight and dry-eyed while the reverend spoke, while her children and grandchildren wept. She had already said her goodbyes in the privacy of the night, whispering them into the darkness, thanking Nathan for keeping his promise, for showing her that she truly never needed eyes to see his love. James and Emma insisted Clara move in with them, but she refused. "This is my home," she said. "I know every inch of it. I will not leave." Samuel moved into the main house with his family, running the ranch while Clara remained in her room, the room she had shared with Nathan for so long. She felt his absence keenly, the empty space beside her in bed, the silence where his voice should be. But life continued, because it always did. Clara still rose each morning, still helped where she could, still sat on the porch in the evenings listening to the sounds of the ranch. Rose visited often, bringing her children, reading to Clara from books and newspapers. "There is talk of electric lights coming to the whole town," Rose reported one day. Clara smiled. "How marvelous, though I suppose it will not make much difference to me." "Mama," Rose said, her voice suddenly serious, "were you happy, truly happy, despite everything?" Clara reached for her daughter's hand. "I was blessed, Rose. I lost my sight, yes, and that was a grief I carried for years. But in losing one thing, I gained so much more. I gained your father and all of you, and a life I could never have imagined in Boston. Would I have chosen blindness? No. But would I trade the life I have lived? Never." Clara lived to be 82 years old, still sharp of mind and steady of hand. She was surrounded by children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren, a legacy that stretched far beyond what she could see. On her last day, sitting on the porch in the warm June sun, Clara felt Nathan's presence beside her as clearly as if he were truly there. She heard his voice in the wind, felt his hand in the warmth of the light. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "I never needed eyes to see your love." When Clara closed her sightless eyes for the last time, she did so with a smile, ready to join the man who had shown her that vision came in many forms, and that the truest sight was always that of the heart. She was buried beside Nathan under the oak trees they had loved, and her gravestone bore a simple inscription: "Clara Foster, beloved wife, mother, grandmother." She saw with her heart. The ranch continued, passed down through James to his children, and then to their children. The story of the blind woman who came west to marry a rancher became family legend, told and retold, a testament to courage and love, and the ways that two people can find each other, even in darkness. And though Clara had never seen the California landscape with her physical eyes, never watched a sunset over the golden hills or gazed at the faces of her children, she had seen more than most. She had seen the truth of a man's character in his words and actions. She had seen the beauty of the world through detailed descriptions and her own careful exploration. She had seen her children grow not through their changing appearances, but through their developing personalities, their kindnesses and their struggles. In the end, Clara Peterson Foster had seen everything that mattered, and she had been loved completely, just as Nathan had promised on that first day when she stepped off the stagecoach into a life she could never have imagined. The ranch house still stands, white paint refreshed over the years, green shutters maintained. The oak trees have grown thicker, their shade deeper. Sometimes, in the golden light of late afternoon, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear the echo of voices, a man describing a sunset to the woman he loves, her laughter rising like music in response. And in that sound, in that moment, lies the truth that Clara learned and Nathan knew. That love requires no sight, that hearts can see what eyes cannot, and that the deepest bonds are those formed not in the light but in the trust and tenderness of two souls reaching for each other in the darkness, finding connection, finding home, finding everything that matters.